For 8 straight months, everyone in my compound believed our landlord's 24-year-old daughter Simi was a high-class runs girl. Every single night at exactly 9:45 p.m., she would leave the house, enter a boat, and never return until around 6 a.m.
Good
What we
morning.
discovered last week left all of us in tears. Our landlord, Baba Shegun, a retired civil servant, was one of the kindest men I have ever met. Despite inflation, he did not increase our rent in 4 years. He
Country
would
hard,
always say,
make we no
country
suffocate each
hard,
other.
make we not suffocate each other. We all loved and respected him. But his daughter Simi was the compound topic. During the day, she was always sleeping, looking exhausted and withdrawn. But by night, she would dress up, spray nice perfume, and a ride would come pick her up. By morning, she'd return looking completely drained. You know how compound life in Nigeria is.
You
The
no hear
gossip
wetin happen
started by the
yesterday?
water pumping
Anastasia
machine.
don pack run
Look
away
at
o.
her
True
eyes.
word.
She doesn't
I
sleep.
think say na lie
Iyafavor
o.
would whisper. Baba is forming strict, but his daughter is doing night hustle. Another neighbor would add. Slowly, we all began to judge her. We even started giving her attitude when she came out to the compound.
Good morning.
But Simi would just smile weakly, say good morning, and quickly go back inside. I used to watch her from my window more than I like to admit. For months, I had tried getting close to Simi. I would hang around the corridor when she was doing chores,
Simi,
try to
how
start a
far?
conversation about
You don
nothing,
chop?
or offer to help her carry her generator. But she always brushed me off. She would look at me like I was
Daniel,
standing in
I'm
her way,
busy.
murmur that she was busy, and walk away. After the third rejection, my pride took over. I told myself I was done stressing over her. That was why, when the compound gossip started heating up, I didn't defend her. In fact, deep down inside my chest, a bitter little part of me was glad. If she was too good for me, maybe she wasn't so good after all. By the fifth month,
I'm
the
telling
whispers
you,
had turned into open
that girl dey
theories.
hide something.
Iyafavor took it upon herself to collect compound evidence like a detective on a low budget. I saw her enter a hotel
I
in
saw
Ikeja
her
last
near
weekend.
one
She
hotel
swore over a
last
pot of
weekend.
boiling
I
beans.
swear.
She entered with one older man,
One no
holding her
one.
phone like a calculator,
Dedicated jobless
and the
organic.
clothes, Iyafavor added, waving her wooden spoon, designer gown. Where did a jobless
Where
girl of
did a
24
jobless
see
girl
money
of
to buy
24
original
see money
perfume
to buy
that will stay
original
in the
perfume?
corridor for 10 minutes after she passed? I listened to all of it. Sometimes I even nodded because I had watched her leave that many times. I knew the exact sound of her high heels clicking against the concrete floor at around 9:43 p.m. I knew the specific brand of sweet vanilla scent she sprayed before stepping out. The weight of my own failed attempts to date her had turned sour in my mind, making me more than willing to believe the worst. Then came that Tuesday morning. It was around 7:30 a.m. NEPA had just taken lights, and everybody was outside trying to catch fresh air by the corridor. Simi walked in through the compound gates. She looked worse than usual. Her wig was slightly crooked. Her face lacked the usual morning freshness, and she dragged her feet like her legs were filled with sand. She walked past the water tank,
Good
where
morning.
Iyafavor and two other tenants were sitting. Good morning, Simi murmured, not even raising her head. Nobody answered her. Iyafavor just hissed, sucking her teeth loudly, and turned her face away. I was standing by my door. I don't know why I said it. Maybe it was just the bitter taste of my own ego. My mouth ran before my
Waka
brain
well.
would stop it.
Night work is not easy.
Waka well, I muttered loud enough for the whole corridor to hear. Night work is not easy. The compound went dead quiet. Even the generator 3 houses away seemed to drop its volume. Simi stopped walking. She didn't turn around immediately. Her shoulders tightened under her jacket. Then slowly, she glanced back. She didn't curse or shout at me. She just looked at me. Her eyes held a kind of deep crushing disappointment that made me instantly wish the concrete floor would open and swallow me. Without saying a single word, she turned and walked down the corridor to her apartment, closing her door quietly behind her. I stood there with my toothbrush in my hand, feeling like an absolute fool. The satisfaction I thought I would feel was gone, replaced with a cold, heavy knot in my stomach. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself she brought it on herself. But as the days dragged on, that look she gave me wouldn't leave my head. She didn't look like a proud runs girl caught in the act. She looked like someone drowning, and the rest of us were standing on the shore, pointing fingers. I tried to focus on my work and ignore her entirely, but compound life has a way of refusing to let you forget things. On the evening after my careless remark to Simi, the Lagos heat was heavy. People sat outside on plastic chairs, fanning themselves with old newspapers, but the usual loud jokes around the corridor were quiet. Even Iyafevo did not mention Simi when she walked past. Maybe it was because Baba Shegun was sitting on his usual wooden chair near his door, looking tired and coughing into a handkerchief. Or maybe some part of us knew that we had gone too far. That evening, I noticed an old woman outside our compound gate. She wore a faded Ankara wrapper and a dark head tie that covered all her hair. She sat under the big neem tree just outside our compound, with her back against the rough tree trunk. Her eyes looked like those of someone who had been blind for many years, but her face was calm and still. By 8 p.m., she was still there. By 9 p.m., she had not moved at all. In a place like ours, strangers did not just sit outside the compound for hours without someone asking a question. But there was something about the woman that made people stay away. The children stopped playing football near the tree. Even the local boys who usually gathered near the transformer to smoke and gist stayed away from that place. I stood by the gate around 9:30 p.m., watching her from the shadows of the porch. Mama,
Good
good evening,
evening,
oh.
oh.
I called out softly, testing the water. Hope everything is alright. She didn't turn her head. She didn't blink. Her milky eyes stayed fixed straight ahead, staring directly at the brick wall of our compound. The night is cold outside, I added, stepping a little closer. She slowly tilted her chin upward. Her voice didn't sound old or frail. It was shockingly clear. The night is only cold for those who don't know what is walking in it, my son. I frowned. I beg, wetin you mean? Before she could answer, the heavy wooden door of Simi's apartment clicked open. Her sweet vanilla perfume drifted down the corridor. Simi stepped out. She wore a fitted dark dress that hugged her frame, her hair neatly laid, carrying a small designer handbag. She looked every bit the glamorous Lagos babe the compound gossips claimed she was. She walked quickly toward the front gate, her head down, avoiding looking at anyone. As Simi passed the gate and stepped onto the street, the blind woman turned her head sharply to the left. She followed the exact sound of Simi's high heels on the road. Her blind eyes seemed to follow Simi as she waved at a coming boat and got into the back seat. I stood still by the gate. Then the old woman turned her head back, her blind eyes fixed on my face with a scary kind of accuracy, even though I was standing half hidden in the dark. Don't judge that girl, she said with a soft voice. Me? Wetin concern me, I said. You look with your eyes,
You
the
look
woman
with your
interrupted.
eyes, but
But
your
your
eyes
eyes
are
are blind.
blind.
Leave her
Leave
alone.
her alone.
I stood there like a fool, my heart beating fast. I wanted to snap at her. I wanted to ask her who she was, why she was sitting outside our gate like a ghost, and what business she had with my life or Simi's life. Before I could answer her, a heavy truck passed on the main road, sending dust into the air. I coughed and waved the sand away from my face. When the dust cleared, I looked back at the tree, but she was gone. I walked out to the street and looked left and right. The road was quiet, with only the light of a faraway NEPA pole. How did an old blind woman like that disappear in just 3 seconds? I went back inside the compound, telling myself it was just some mad woman from the area trying to play games with my mind. But when I laid on my bed, I could not sleep. The gossip was not making sense anymore. The mystery was starting to feel too heavy to ignore. I could not just sit there and watch anymore. The next night, when the time on my phone reached 9:40 p.m., I put on a dark face cap and waited by my window. A few minutes later, Simi came out of the compound. As usual, a boat pulled up, and she got in without looking around. I waited until the car drove away, then quickly stopped a Corolla and told the driver to follow it. My driver kept humming along to the Fuji music playing from his phone, while I watched through the front glass, fully focused on Simi's boat ahead of us. We passed through the heavy traffic around Ojota, crossed the bridge, and went deep into the industrial area of Ikeja. Around 10:20 p.m., the boat ahead stopped beside a tall, plain-looking compound. The paint was old, and a rusty sign on the wall read Apex Polymers Limited. I paid my driver quickly and hurried behind some parked trucks across the road, keeping my face cap low over my eyes. Simi got out of the boat, paid the driver, and walked through a small side gate beside the huge iron gates of the factory. I waited. The hours moved slowly, and my legs hurt from standing in the shade of an old generator house. I kept expecting her to come out 10 minutes later with another man, going to some hotel like the people in the compound had been saying. But the midnight came and went. Then 1 a.m., then 3 a.m. By 5:30 a.m., the big iron gates of the factory finally opened. A group of tired workers began to come out into the cold morning air. Most of them looked worn out, wiping sweat and fine plastic dust from their faces as they walked out. I looked closely at the crowd. Then I saw her. At first, my mind could not believe that the woman I was seeing was Simi. She was not wearing a nice dress or expensive perfumes. Simi came out wearing a yellow hard hat and a dirty work suit. Her boots were covered in dust, and sweat ran down her face. She looked tired, like someone who had just gone through a hard fight. My chest felt tight. Every bad thing I had said about her over the past 8 months came back to me. I had nothing to say. Before I could come out from behind the truck and call her, a car horn suddenly broke the quiet morning. A familiar silver Toyota Camry stopped near the gate. It belonged to Bro Shooks, one of the tenants in our compound. The passenger door opened and he leaned out, looking for the person he had come to pick. Then he froze. His eyes went straight to Simi, who was standing beside the gutter.
Simi,
Uh-uh,
what are you
Chooks
doing here?
muttered loudly, cutting the engine right there in the middle of the road. Simi, what are you doing here? Simi stopped dead in her tracks. She looked up and froze when she saw Shooks. Then her eyes moved past him and landed on me, hiding behind the truck. For a moment, none of us moved. Simi tried to speak, but no words came out. The nylon bag fell from her hand as she covered her face and sank onto the curb. Then she broke down. Chooks stepped out of his car. He didn't ask questions. He just walked over, picked up Simi's falling nylon bag, and gently helped her up to her feet. Let's enter the car, he said gently. I followed them and we sat inside the Camry. Simi sat in the back, shaking, trying to wipe the grey dust off her face with a dirty handkerchief. Finally, her hands dropped to her lap as she stared at the floor mat. He is going blind, she whispered. Her voice was cracked. Baba has severe glaucoma. The doctor said if he doesn't get surgery soon, the darkness will be permanent. It costs 2.5 million naira, and government hasn't paid his pension in over 2 years. Chooks turned around from the driver's seat frowning, but his brother told him to increase our rent last year to raise the money. He refused, Simi cried. He said the country is too hard for everybody. He said he would rather manage than squeeze blood from his tenants. I sat in the passenger seat, staring at her, feeling absolutely sick to my stomach. So you took this job? She nodded, her shoulders shaking. It's a factory night shift. If Baba knew I was doing this kind of labor, it would break his pride completely. He would feel like a burden. He would blame himself. Then it clicked. The heavy makeup, the heels clicking at 9:43 p.m. That's why you dress up, I said softly. Simi wiped her eyes. The factory chemicals smelled too much. The strong perfume hides the scent. The big jackets hide my uniform. I leave the compound looking fine, and I make sure I am back and washed before he wakes up in the morning. The car went dead quiet again. For 8 months, the entire compound had called her a high-class runs girl. I had insulted her to her face just 2 days ago. She wasn't living a secret nightlife. We were all living comfortably on Baba Chegun's kindness, while his daughter destroyed her body in the dark to pay for it. Chooks and I brought the truth back to the compound that morning. We didn't need to shout. Chooks simply told Iyafavor and two other tenants what we saw outside the factory in Ikeja. The silence that followed was heavy. Iyafavor dropped the plastic bowl she was holding. Hey Allah, she shouted with a shaky voice. We dey enjoy Baba kindness, while his daughter dey kill herself in the night. By evening, the tenants held an emergency meeting. There was no gossip this time. They agreed to increase the rent by 30% and put the extra money towards Baba's surgery. I wrote down the names of everyone who wanted to contribute. After everything I had said about Simi, helping was the least I could do. The next morning, Simi stayed inside. She didn't go to the factory. By noon, Iyafavor went to her door with a bowl of rice and plantain. She apologized for the gossip and put Simi into a quiet embrace. There was nothing more to say. Everyone in the compound now knew the truth. Chooks and I went into Baba's room and told him about the factory and the surgery. He sat quiet for a long time. Then a tear rolled down his cheek. My daughter was carrying my burden alone, he said. That was all he could say. By the end of the week, the whole compound had contributed. The 30% rent increase covered a large part of the bill. Chooks added some of his savings, and even people outside the compound began bringing what they could. We were still 200,000 naira short, but the surgery was finally within reach. The remaining 200,000 came by Sunday afternoon. Iyafavor brought a small metal tin filled with crumpled 500 naira and 1000 naira notes, donated by market women who had heard Simi's story. By Monday morning, the hospital deposit was paid in full. Before dawn the next morning, Chuk's cousin drove us to the eye clinic. Baba walked into the hospital with Simi holding his arm. She stayed close to him until the nurses took him in for the final checks. Then the waiting began. Simi sat beside me. Every time a nurse passed, her eyes followed them. Nobody talked much. Chooks kept turning the pages of a magazine without reading a word. Hours passed. Then the theater doors opened. The surgeon walked towards us. The procedure went well. He is stable. Simi broke down. She leaned against me and cried quietly. And for the first time since I had known her, those tears weren't from tiredness or fear. They were tears of relief. A short while later, Baba was wheeled out with his eyes covered in bandages. Simi took his hand and walked beside him. We had finally gotten him the help he needed. We all returned to the compound by Thursday afternoon. Baba sat on his bed, the heavy white bandages still covering his eyes, resting quietly after the journey. I watched from the doorway, weighed down by the heavy truths of what love demands. Later that afternoon, the calm we had fought so hard to build shattered. Simi's phone buzzed aggressively on the wooden table. She picked it up, listened for 5 seconds, and went entirely pale. There's been an accident at the night shift, she whispered. A co-worker on the night shift had lost 2 fingers to the heavy molding machine. The company was already blaming him, saying he had ignored the safety rules. But Simi knew that wasn't true. 3 weeks earlier, she had warned her supervisor about a faulty part on the same machine, but nobody listened. Now, she had proof of the warning. If she showed it, the injured worker could get the help he needed. But the company would also discover that she had been working there without proper approval. She could lose her job, and with it, the only income she had left. That night, Simi and I walked along the factory fence. She was quiet for a long time. Then she finally said, if I speak, I lose my job. If I stay quiet, they will blame an innocent man. I did not know what to tell her, so I simply said, whatever you decide, I will support you. The next morning, Simi went to the factory office and handed in her safety reports. It showed that the company had known about the faulty machine and had ignored the warnings. As expected, she lost her job, but when she returned to the compound, things were different. The workers at the factory contributed what they could to help her. Baba Shegun's old railway colleagues also stepped in and helped her find a stable daytime job. For the first time in months, Simi had a chance to live normally. No more night shifts, no more hiding, no more carrying everything alone. I watched her sit in the courtyard that evening, surrounded by the same people who had once judged her. Then my thoughts went back to the old woman who used to sit beneath the tree by the gate. That evening, I walked to the compound gate. The old blind woman was sitting under the tree, just as she always did. I stopped in front of her. "Who are you?" I asked. "How do you know so much about Simi?" She smiled. "You watched where she went every night, but you never asked why." I did not know what to say. I blinked and the woman was gone. The tree was still there, but there was no old blind woman anymore. I stood there alone, wondering who she really was. Maybe she was just an old woman who saw what the rest of us refused to see. Or maybe she was someone else. I never found out. But I learned one thing. You don't need to know somebody's whole story before you choose to be kind. Later that afternoon, I found Simi sitting alone on the veranda. "Simi, I owe you an apology," I said. "I judged you without knowing what you were going through. I am sorry." She looked at me for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you, Daniel." We didn't talk about love or what would happen between us. For now, the apology was enough. As the sun went down, we went our separate ways. We were no longer two people who misunderstood each other. We finally saw each other clearly. And whatever happened next, we would face it when the time came. Months later, the compound felt different. Baba Shegun was doing much better. The tenants paid their rent without complaining. Iyafavor kept her sharp tongue in check. And Bro Shooks still drove out every morning, honking as he left. One morning, I saw Simi walking through the compound. She wore no heavy makeup or strong perfume. There was no need to hide anything. She was simply herself. I watched her walk past, then looked at the empty spots under the tree where the old woman used to sit. That was when I thought about everything that had happened. We are too quick to judge people when we don't know their story. You may see what someone is doing and think you know why, but the truth is, you never know the whole story unless they choose to tell you.